If you think your date was bad, trust me, you haven't seen anything yet. Mine? It started on Tinder and ended with his mom sitting across from me, sipping chamomile tea, evaluating my potential. No, I'm not kidding. I still remember the exact moment I swiped right. It was a Tuesday night, half past midnight, the kind of time when you're supposed to be asleep, not deciding your romantic future. But there he was, Ethan. Sharp jawline, messy hair, eyes that looked like they'd been stolen from summer sky. His bio was short: coffee, bad puns, and a weakness for lemon pie. I smiled. I like coffee. I like bad puns. And lemon pie? Well, we'd see. The match happened instantly. And within minutes, we were trading messages, quick, witty, and a little flirty. The kind of banter that makes you forget time exists. By the time the clock hit 2 a.m., we had already planned a coffee date for Friday. The location? A tiny cafe tucked between a bookstore and an antique shop. The sort of place that smells like cinnamon and nostalgia. Friday came faster than I expected. I spent the morning picking the right outfit. Something casual, but not too casual. You know, I woke up like this, but in reality, 2 hours of hair and makeup. I got to the cafe early, partly because I was nervous, partly because I wanted the best table, one near the window where the sunlight would make me look less like a pale winter ghost. 5 minutes passed, then 10. I started scrolling through my phone, pretending not to check the door every 30 seconds. And then I saw him, tall, wearing a navy jacket, smiling as if the air itself approved of his existence. My heart gave a small, unnecessary leap. He walked toward me, but something was wrong. He wasn't alone. Beside him was a woman. Not just any woman. A woman in her mid-50s, hair perfectly styled, pearls around her neck, walking with the kind of elegance you only see in period dramas. I blinked. Surely this was a coincidence. Surely she wasn't here for her. "Hi," Ethan said, setting his phone in his pocket. "This is my mom, Patricia. I thought it'd be fun if she joined us." Fun. I think my smile froze somewhere between polite confusion and complete horror. Patricia sat down before I could say a word. "Darling," she said, leaning in with that voice mothers use when they've already decided they know what's best for you. "I just want to make sure my son is making the right choice." I laughed, because what else could I do? This had to be a joke. Maybe they were filming a prank video. Maybe a camera would pop out from behind the pastries. But no, Ethan just looked normal, relaxed, like this was completely standard first date behavior. The waiter arrived, and Patricia ordered chamomile tea for all three of us. I wanted coffee. I needed coffee. But somehow, I ended up nodding and smiling while my inner voice screamed, "Run." She started with the questions. "What do your parents do? What's your stance on marriage? Do you want kids? How many? In what time frame?" Ethan just sat there, sipping his tea, occasionally adding, "Yeah, mom's just thorough." Thorough. This was a background check with scones. I tried to stay calm. I answered politely. I even smiled when she told me my lipstick shade was a little too bold for a first impression. It was only 20 minutes into the date, but I was mentally writing my escape plan. Still, I have to admit, she was oddly charming. Every so often, she'd make a sharp joke at Ethan's expense that had me laughing harder than I wanted to. And there was this sincerity in her eyes, like she wasn't trying to ruin my day, just protect her son. But it was all so overwhelming. I barely knew Ethan, and here I was already in an interview with HR. Except HR was his mother, and the promotion was marriage. By the end of the hour, I was drained. Patricia shook my hand like she was sealing a business deal. Ethan hugged me, said, "Let's do this again," and walked me to my car. I drove home in stunned silence, replaying every weird second. That night, I told my best friend. She nearly choked on her wine. "Block him," she said. "Block him right now." And honestly, I almost did. But something made me hesitate. Something about the way Patricia had looked at me in that last moment. A look that wasn't judgmental anymore, but curious. And something about Ethan's calm, unbothered smile. It was the worst date of my life. But it wasn't over. So, I didn't block him. And that's how I ended up at a second date where his mom was somehow already waiting at the table before I even got there. After date number 1, I swore to myself, never again. But Ethan was persistent. The next day, he sent me a text. Ethan, sorry if that was weird. Mom's just part of the package. Me? Weird? It was memorable. Ethan, coffee again? No interviews this time. Promise. I stare at my phone for a solid 5 minutes. Every rational bone in my body screamed in no. But curiosity? Oh, curiosity is dangerous. And it was winning. So I said yes. Friday evening. Same cafe. Different table. I walked in, scanning for Ethan, and froze. Patricia was there. Alone. Perfectly composed. Reading a book like she owned the place. Oh, hello. Darling, she said as if she'd been expecting me. Which apparently she had. I barely had time to respond before Ethan appeared, carrying 3 mugs of coffee. He looked sheepish. Okay, so, Mom might have decided to come. Uninvited. But she promised to just sit quietly. Spoiler. She did not sit quietly. This time, instead of grilling me with personal questions, Patricia decided she wanted to get to know me in a more relaxed way, which apparently meant telling me embarrassing stories about Ethan's childhood, like the time he dressed up as a pirate for 3 months straight and insisted everyone call him Captain Pickles, or how he once wrote a love letter to his math teacher in crayon. Ethan kept groaning and trying to change the subject, but I was laughing so hard my stomach hurt. Somewhere between the pirate story and the one about him crying at the zoo because a goat sneezed on him, I realized I wasn't as uncomfortable as before. Patricia had this way of making every story sound like a mini soap opera. She didn't just talk, she performed. Her eyebrows did half the work. And when she laughed, it was loud, unapologetic, contagious. For the first time, I was actually enjoying myself, which was alarming. At the end of the night, Patricia surprised me. She leaned in and whispered, "You're different. Most girls don't come back after meeting me. That says something." Then she winked. Fast forward 2 weeks. Date number 3 wasn't even my idea. It was Patricia's. She texted me. Yes, texted me, asking if I wanted to help her pick a birthday gift for Ethan. I laughed out loud. Somehow, somewhere between date number 1 and date number 2, she had gotten my number. Ethan swore he didn't give it to her, but I'm not convinced. I went. Not because I was in love with Ethan. Honestly, at this point, I wasn't sure if I was dating him or his mom. But because she was fun. We wandered through shops, debating whether Ethan would like a leather wallet or noise-canceling headphones. Patricia kept telling me insider secrets about him, like how he once cried during a Pixar movie but pretended it was allergies. We ended up buying him a ridiculously expensive coffee grinder and splitting the cost like co-conspirators. That night, Ethan looked between us like he'd walked into an alternate reality. "You two get along?" he asked, baffled. Patricia smirked. "Oh, darling, she's much better company than you are." The turning point came at date number 4. This time, Ethan invited me over for dinner. When I arrived, Patricia answered the door, wearing an apron, cooking lasagna. Ethan wasn't even home yet. He was running late from work, which meant I spent the first hour helping his mom chop vegetables, sipping wine, and listening to her tell me about her own dating disasters from the 80s. By the time Ethan finally showed up, we were halfway through a bottle of Merlot and deep into a conversation about whether pineapple belongs on pizza. I think that's when I realized I wasn't just tolerating Patricia anymore. I liked her. A lot. Which was complicated, because I still wasn't sure about Ethan. The weeks blurred into months. I'd see Ethan twice a week, but I'd see Patricia almost as often. She'd invite me for lunch, or to help her rearrange her living room, or to taste test her experimental baking projects, which sometimes tasted like heaven and sometimes like burnt regret. It got to the point where my friends started joking. "Are you dating him? Or his mom?" I laughed it off, but deep down, I was starting to wonder the same thing. One rainy Sunday, Ethan and I were having coffee, just the two of us, when he suddenly said, "You know, Mom really likes you." "That's rare." I smiled awkwardly. "I like her too." He hesitated. "No, I mean she really likes you. I think she already sees you as family." I nearly choked on my cappuccino. Family. That word lingered, and somewhere in the back of my mind, a ridiculous thought whispered, what if this actually works? It was still the worst first date I'd ever had, but it was no longer a disaster. It was the beginning of something I couldn't quite define yet. By month 3, I'd stopped pretending. I wasn't just dating Ethan. I was basically in a committed relationship with his mom. And honestly, it was going better than any romance I'd ever had. It started subtly. One week, Patricia and I were just shopping together. The next, we had inside jokes. By month 3, we had an actual group chat. Just the two of us, called Ethan's Bosses. We used it to discuss everything from dinner plans to mocking Ethan's questionable shoe choices. And yet, somehow, Ethan didn't seem bothered. In fact, he seemed relieved, like his mom approving of me took a weight off his shoulders. One evening, Ethan invited me over for a surprise. I assumed it would be something romantic. Maybe a candlelit dinner. Maybe a weekend trip. It was a board game night with his mom and his aunt. I wanted to roll my eyes, but here's the thing. I had a blast. We played charades until midnight. Patricia was aggressively competitive. Ethan's aunt kept bending the rules, and Ethan himself, well, let's just say acting out Jurassic Park was not his strong suit. I caught myself watching him differently that night. There was something about the way he laughed when his mom teased him, or the way he let his aunt cheat without saying anything, that made him seem softer, warmer. That's when it hit me. Somewhere between date number 1 and this board game night, I'd stopped thinking of Ethan as the guy who brought his mom on our first date and started thinking of him as Ethan. Flawed, awkward, unexpectedly kind Ethan. Patricia, of course, noticed. A week later, she cornered me in the kitchen while Ethan was outside getting the mail. "You like him now," she said matter-of-factly. I froze. "What? I've always liked him." She raised an eyebrow. "No, you tolerated him. There's a difference. Now you like him." I tried to argue, but she was right. And she looked pleased. That's when the meddling began. It wasn't overbearing, not at first. She'd casually suggest activities for us. "Oh, you two should go to that new Italian place." Or, "There's a street fair this Saturday. You'd love it." The thing is, she was good at it. Every suggestion ended up being something I actually enjoyed. It was like having a personal dating coach who knew all the shortcuts. Then came the first real crisis. Ethan and I had our first fight. It was over something small, a miscommunication about weekend plans, but it spiraled fast. I left his apartment frustrated, thinking, well, that's it. We gave a shot. An hour later, my phone buzzed. It was Patricia. "Come over," she said. I hesitated. "I don't think that's a good idea." "Now," she said, with the tone of someone who does not negotiate. I went. When I arrived, she was already making tea. She listened to my rant without interrupting once. Then she said, "Ethan's a good man. He's just not always great at expressing himself. You're both stubborn, but I've seen you together. This is worth working through." It wasn't a lecture. It wasn't pressure. It was clarity. The next day, Ethan apologized. Not in a grand, movie-style gesture. Just a quiet, sincere "I'm sorry" over coffee. And it was enough. After that, things shifted. We weren't just dating casually anymore. We were building something. And Patricia? She was right there, quietly and not so quietly, helping it along. She invited me to family dinners. She taught me her lasagna recipe. She even gave me tips on handling Ethan when he gets moody, like I was studying for an exam. One Saturday, the three of us went hiking. It should have been romantic couples in nature, you know? But somehow it turned into me and Patricia speed walking ahead, leaving Ethan behind and competing to spot the most squirrels. Halfway through, Patricia tripped slightly. I grabbed her arm instinctively. She smiled at me. Not her usual mischievous smile, but something warmer. Softer. "You know," she said, "I used to worry no one would be patient enough for Ethan. But I don't worry anymore." It hit me harder than I expected, because I realized I didn't worry anymore either. By month 5, Patricia wasn't just part of the relationship. She was the relationship glue. And I was starting to see a future I'd never imagined back on date number 1. A future where Ethan and I were together. And Patricia was family. By month 6, I wasn't just dating Ethan. I wasn't just friends with Patricia. We'd somehow turned into a 3-person team. And none of us had said it out loud yet, but something big was coming. Looking back, I should have known. Patricia was acting different. Still her witty, teasing self, but with an extra sparkle in her eye, like she knew a secret she was dying to tell me. She dropped strange hints during conversations, little things like, "Oh, you might want to get your nails done soon," or, "Do you like the idea of winter weddings?" At first, I thought she was just in one of her playful moods. But after a week of these cryptic comments, I started wondering, was she plotting something? One Saturday morning, she invited me over for a girls' brunch. Just the two of us. No Ethan. We drank mimosas, ate pancakes, and somewhere between bite 3 and bite 4, she leaned forward and said, "Darling, do you see yourself marrying my son?" I froze, fork halfway to my mouth. "That's a big question." "Yes," she said, unfazed. "And you're smart enough to have an answer." I tried to laugh it off, but the truth was, I had thought about it. More than once. Not in a fairy tale, princess and prince way. In a quiet, comfortable way. Like, yes, I could actually build a life with Ethan. Patricia's eyes softened. Good. That's all I needed to know. The next 2 weeks were suspiciously calm. Too calm. Ethan was his usual self, but Patricia seemed busy. She'd cancel our usual lunches. She'd send me vague texts like, "Working on a surprise. You'll thank me later." Then came the weekend. Ethan told me he had a special date planned. He wouldn't tell me where we were going, just to dress nice but bring comfortable shoes. We drove out of the city, through winding roads lined with autumn trees, until we reached a small vineyard. The day was perfect. Warm sun, crisp air, golden leaves drifting in the breeze. We toured the vineyard, sampled wine, and then Ethan led me to a secluded garden area. And there she was, Patricia, standing next to a picnic table covered in flowers, candles, and, I'm not joking, an entire cheesecake. "Surprise," she said. I blinked. "You planned our date?" She smiled innocently. "Oh, I helped. Ethan did the rest." Ethan took my hand. His palms were warm but slightly shaky. "I wanted today to be special," he said. "And I wanted the 2 people I care about most to be here." My heart started racing. Oh no, this was happening. He reached into his pocket, dropped to one knee. Patricia's face lit up like she'd just won the lottery. "I know our story started in the weirdest way possible," Ethan said, smiling nervously. "But I wouldn't change it. You make me better. You make life better. And I can't imagine a future without you. Will you marry me?" For a second, I just stared. The vineyard was quiet except for the rustle of leaves and Patricia whispering, loudly, "Say yes." And I did. I said yes. The moment was chaos. Ethan hugged me. Patricia hugged both of us. Someone popped a bottle of champagne, and I think the vineyard staff clapped. It was all a blur. Then, when Ethan wandered off to take a phone call, Patricia pulled me aside. "You know," she said, eyes twinkling, "I told him to propose here. I picked the flowers. I even ordered the cheesecake." I laughed. "Of course you did." And, she added, lowering her voice, "I made him practice the speech. Twice." From that moment on, wedding planning became, well, it became our project. Not mine and Ethan's. Mine and Patricia's. She had a binder. An actual binder, color-coded, with tabs for everything. Venue, catering, music, dress ideas. It was like she'd been waiting her whole life for this. And honestly, I loved it. We'd spend afternoons flipping through flower arrangements, taste-testing cakes, and debating over whether we needed a string quartet or a jazz trio. Ethan would try to contribute, but we'd wave him off. "This is serious business," Patricia would say. "Go play video games." Somewhere in the chaos, I realized something important. Patricia wasn't just helping me plan a wedding. She was helping me feel at home. In this family. In this life. It wasn't just about marrying Ethan anymore. It was about becoming part of something bigger. Something I'd stumbled into completely by accident, and now couldn't imagine giving up. The months flew by. We found the perfect venue. A rustic barn strung with fairy lights. Patricia cried when I found my dress. I cried when she handed me a small box containing a pearl bracelet that had been in her family for generations. For the wedding day, she said, "It's yours now." By the time the invitations were sent, it was official. Patricia was my best friend. Not in a forced, "we're family so we have to like each other" way. In a real way. We texted every day. We had coffee without Ethan. We even started planning a post-wedding girls' trip to Italy. And yet, nothing could have prepared me for what she did on the actual wedding day. The morning of my wedding, I thought I knew exactly how the day would go. What I didn't know, that Patricia had one last, enormous surprise up her perfectly pressed sleeve. The morning began in a whirl of white fabric and champagne bubbles. Hair, makeup, photographs, everything happening at once. Somewhere in the middle of it, Patricia slipped into the bridal suite. She looked flawless, of course. Navy blue dress, pearl earrings, hair swept up like she'd stepped out of a magazine. But her eyes were misty, and she was holding a small envelope. "This is for later," she said, pressing it into my hands. "No peeking until after the ceremony." Then she hugged me so tightly I thought she might wrinkle my dress, which for Patricia was the ultimate act of love. The ceremony went by in a haze. The barn glowed under strings of fairy lights. Friends and family smiled through happy tears. Ethan looked at me like I was the only person in the world. And Patricia? She sat in the front row, dabbing her eyes with a tissue like she'd just watched the season finale of her favorite drama. When we were pronounced husband and wife, she was the loudest to cheer. Of course she was. The reception was pure magic. Long tables covered in flowers, a live band playing jazz, laughter spilling into the night. Halfway through dinner, Ethan stood up to make a speech. He thanked everyone for coming, made a few jokes about how I'd passed the ultimate test by surviving a first date with his mom, and then raised his glass. But before he could sit down, Patricia stood up. No warning, no notes, just Patricia, commanding the room like a seasoned actress. "I wasn't planning to make a speech tonight," she began, which was a lie so obvious the guests laughed. "When Ethan first told me he was bringing a girl to meet me, I decided to do a little evaluation. Quality control, if you will. So yes, I may have inserted myself into their first date." More laughter. I shook my head, smiling. Patricia continued. "What I didn't expect was that she'd come back for a second date. Or a third. Or that we'd end up shopping together, baking together, gossiping about Ethan's terrible haircut choices together. Somewhere along the way, she stopped being my son's girlfriend and became my friend. My best friend." My throat tightened. Patricia took a deep breath. "I have watched you love my son with patience and kindness. I watched you challenge him, support him, and yes, occasionally save him from his own cooking disasters. But more than that, I've watched you love me, too. And that means the world." She turned to me, eyes bright. "So, today isn't just about me gaining a daughter-in-law. It's about gaining a daughter. Full stop." The room erupted into applause. I was already crying before she left the microphone. Later, when the dancing started and the champagne flowed, I finally remembered the envelope she'd given me that morning. I slipped away to a quiet corner and opened it. Inside was a handwritten letter. "Darling, I know today is about you and Ethan, but I wanted you to know something from that very first date. Yes, the one you still call the worst of your life. I saw something in you. Strength, humor, a refusal to be intimidated. Most people would have run for the hills. You stayed. And because you stayed, you changed both our lives. You are more than family to me. You are my safe place, my partner in crime, my proof that sometimes the most awkward beginnings lead to the most beautiful endings. Welcome home. Love, Patricia." I pressed the letter to my chest, feeling the weight of every word. It wasn't just a note. It was the final confirmation of what I'd been feeling for months. Patricia wasn't in the way of our relationship. She was part of it, a cornerstone. That night, as the reception wound down, Patricia pulled me onto the dance floor. We spun under the fairy lights, laughing like we'd been friends forever. Ethan joined us, shaking his head. "This is exactly how I picture my wedding," he said. Me, dancing awkwardly next to my wife and my mom, who were clearly plotting something without me. We were. Italy. Next spring. No boys allowed. If someone had told me a year ago that I'd meet my husband on Tinder, survive a first date with his mom as a chaperone, and end up calling that same woman my best friend, I would have laughed them out of the room. But life is strange. Sometimes the worst date of your life turns into the best decision you ever made. And as Patricia squeezed my hand under the twinkling lights, I knew one thing for sure. I hadn't just married Ethan. I'd married into a friendship I'd treasure for the rest of my life.